Chimbarkar sir, over to you
Yes,
for
sir.
the introduction.
So, good morning, all. I welcome you to for the session 10 and 11 of this FDP. So, session 10 will be on project-based learning principles and philosophy, and session number 11 will be on project-based learning model designs, which will be given by the speaker Dr. Vikas V. Shinde. Dr. Shinde Dr. Shinde is working as a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Director of Center of Excellence in Project-Based Learning, Vishwaniketan, IMET, Khalapur, Mumbai University. He is the first Indian who did PhD in PBL from Aalborg University, Denmark, and awarded by the UNESCO Chair in PBL. He received the prestigious Erasmus Mundus Mobility for Life scholarship from the European Union. He is working as Erasmus and project coordinator and steering committee member for projects having the international custodian. He has about the 19 plus years of teaching experience. He have published the 7 textbooks, 1 international e-thesis, 43 journal papers, and 2 patents. He is acted as a reviewer of international journals and conferences. He has trained more than 4,800 plus teachers and through the 140 plus national and international workshops on PBL and various teaching learning methods. His research areas are project-based learning model design, human-centric design, and hydrogen energy. He developed and implemented various capacity building programs for the institutes. He visited about 17 countries and 6 international universities. He has been consulting 3 Indian institutes to build the project-based learning curriculum and the models. So with this short introduction, I would like to call Dr. Vikas Shinde sir to kindly start his session. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Chimbarkar sir.
Thank you,
Now,
sir.
uh, before starting the sir, you can share the screen. There are 2 consecutive sessions to be conducted by respected Dr. Vikas Shinde sir. So, sir will have the liberty to have a break in between around at 10:30, and for both the sessions, separate only one link will be provided for attendance and feedback at the end of second session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much and good morning everyone. How are you doing? I hope everybody is fine and enjoying the this 5 days training program. Today I'll be talking more about project based learning and some basic implementation strategies. So I'll be talking much more the experiences which I had during my PhD as well as during my practice of PBL. And meanwhile, I will stop my video because I will manage some bandwidth so that you will get my voice clearly.
Yes,
Uh, Please give me feedback whether I'm
yes,
clearly
sir.
audible.
Yes, sir,
Yes, sir.
audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir,
fantastic.
and the screen is also visible. And uh, now the participants can mute anytime. Is it okay, sir? Or will it be allowed during the only question answer session?
No, 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 no. They can ask me, stop me anytime. No
Yes,
problem. Give them a liberty
yes, sir.
to
Yes, yes. They
unmute.
have, but they have to take precaution that after having conversation, they have to mute them. So
Yes, yes.
otherwise, we are here also. No problem. Okay, sir. Please.
So the request to all participants is to ask me questions, ask me doubt during my presentation. If you have any question, you can raise your hand or I will ask you many questions and then I'm expecting that you will be answering me. Obviously that questions will not be difficult questions, obviously. But my point is very simple that you should participate, ask questions, get the most of whatever I can share with you in this stipulated time, and then be active. And always remember there is no right or no wrong answer. It's the way we interpret it. So the opening your thoughts is a good beginning to learn. So this is one request. And for this next 3 hours, you are my students. So you as a teacher, when you expect your students to behave, so the same way I'm expecting my students to behave. So with this note, I will start. So if you see that always we need to, being a teacher, we always have this practice to understand, okay, what I am going to tell my students. So same way, today I am going to explain you what is principles and basic taxonomy of PBL. How do someone can apply PBL principles to develop their own models? What are the important steps to identify the problems, which essentially a PBL problem? And obviously we'll understand how learning happens in PBL, and a very important question which many times people ask me, sir, what is the difference between problem-based learning and project-based learning? So these are the some of the questions which I will address. And by the time, if you have any question, anytime you can stop me. Many of us are teachers. Or in fact, most of us are teachers in this session. And what is a predominant strategy we're applying in a class is teacher, a well-prepared teacher with his notes, course file, his PowerPoint presentations, a very sound knowledge enters into the class. Class is full, and when the class is full, student teacher gets motivated and he starts explaining the concepts. And by the time he reaches to the first 10-15 minutes, he start understanding that my students are not with me. And this is the very important situation which everybody faces in a class, where the students' motivation to learn has now become a very questionable practice, because many times we have seen that students are attending the classes, but why they are attending the classes is questionable. So the question, fundamental question is here, I am teaching, are they learning? So if you see this part, I am teaching, but question is, are they learning? So the teacher which is having prepared notes, PowerPoint presentations, having lots of knowledge about the subject, this is the knowledge which a teacher is showering. And these are the students who are putting their umbrellas on, which means that then they don't want to take the knowledge. Or maybe their receptors are not working. So that way, the point here is very simple. It's what Ralph Tyler says. It is what he does, what he learns, not the teacher does. So a very simple fundamental principle which everybody follows in the teaching learning process, or we need to follow, is how to make students active, and not in the class, also outside the class. And PBL is more about mix up everything like active learning, experiential learning, different learning processes. So fundamentally, if you remember that we need to shift the focus from teaching, and then we need to shift the focus towards the learning. And when I say learning, the best method to improve students' learning is a PBL. And that is what I'm going to explain you today. Now, when somebody says PBL, there are different practices everybody is doing. And then what is to be called as a PBL and what is not to be called as a PBL, how you can do that. And for that, there has to be have some principles. And that some principles we need to understand. Okay. So today's talk is more about P2BL. It's a problem-based, project-based learning. And when I always ask this question to my audience, that what you can see here at the center of your screen. What is the name of this bird which is in front of you? Can anyone answer?
Pigeon.
Pigeon. Okay, it's a pigeon. Is there anyone who says
Pigeon.
crow?
No.
Why not?
The color and the body structure.
Color, the body structure. Is it a bird?
Yes.
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Yes, sir. It is bird with cap.
It is not with a cap. So cap is deliberately there because I just wanted to poke this question to everyone that what is PBL. So that is why it is being used. Why it is not a crow?
Crow is black in color, and shape of the body is also different of the crow.
Okay, okay. So why I'm asking this question, because everything we do in a form of a projects cannot be termed as a PBL. So even though crow is also bird and pigeon is also bird, but they have some distinctive characteristics. And unless and until that characteristics have been satisfied, we cannot term this as a PBL. And that is why these two important topics, that what is can be termed as a PBL and how the learning can happen in PBL. So in a nutshell, that while doing any practice, we need to be very careful whether we are really practicing PBL or doing something else. I always start my session with telling my participants that how a normal teacher can get transformed into a different, altogether different philosophical trainer, consultant, and so on and so forth. Because I was spoiled with the good people around me. Fortunately, Dr. Inamdar, who has been very instrumental to understand the importance of PBL in India, right in 2008 and 9, he pushed me to pursue PhD in PBL. Mind you, I was pursuing mechanical engineering PhD. I have stopped my PhD in between in mechanical engineering and then started PhD in project-based learning. And after having a practice of 12 years down the line, I could understand today that PBL has now become a very important strategical change in Indian education system. It has been talked everywhere. My supervisor, Professor Annette Kolmos, who happens to be UNESCO chair in PBL, the only UNESCO chair in whole Europe. I was very fortunate enough to be a student of her. She was very, very proactive in a sense that she wanted to train an Indian student on project-based learning who will in future become a advocate of PBL in India. So this was his two people's vision with which I have started my PhD. And then I should mention Dr. Gaikwad also, because he was my principal at that time and he supported me not only administratively, academically, and morally also. Because unless and until he supported, I could not completed my PhD. So this is in a nutshell the influencing people I had on my life. So each element has been very important because the correct supervisor, the principal who is helping you to implement PBL in your own institutions, because I suppose you are here to implement PBL and know more about PBL. And then you require someone who can give you a vision about why you want to really implement PBL. So this is three elements. Can somebody tell me what is your objective to attend this? Anyone? Why you want to understand PBL?
To make student more involved while we are teaching.
Okay, fantastic. So you want to involve your students while teaching. Okay. So teaching still becomes a central part. Yeah. Okay. We'll discuss more. Yeah. Yes. Anyone, any objective of attending these sessions?
I would like to know how mathematics I can use in projects.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's a very good question. So at the end of the session or maybe middle of the session, you'll be able to understand that, ma'am. Surely you'll be understanding how we can implement. Yeah. So
Uh,
basically,
Due
yes.
to project-based learning, students can easily get the idea about the theoretical concepts.
Okay, but is this your objective to attend?
I'm more interested to teach my students very effectively by every aspect, so I'm attending this session.
Okay. So PBL can be a very effective way to do that, sir. Let me assure you. The only thing is that we need to gel all these things together in a single piece that we call as a PBL model. Okay. Thanks for your responses. So let's move further. There are some popular myths related to PBL. We say we do projects. When we do projects, we do PBL. But unfortunately, it is not a PBL. Many times, many institutions send their students to different competitions, and then the students have different ranking in that competitions, and then we say that we are doing PBL. Unfortunately, it is also not a PBL. Capstone projects, which is towards the end of the academics, especially in a final year, marginally it's very close to PBL practice, but a foolproof PBL practice cannot be said as a capstone project. There are many skill development tasks which are nowadays have been uh, added into the curriculum, where there are skill labs or skill development sessions. Unfortunately, that is also not a PBL. But we are aware as a teachers that when students are involved in a project, well, they learn something. And then we say that learning is happening through PBL. I believe that learning happens in projects, but still it cannot be termed as a PBL. So what can be termed as a PBL? That's now becomes a very important question. Are you ready to understand this question? What is PBL now? Is there anyone who was carrying this myth where they think they are doing PBL?
Yes, sir. First point. While doing project, I thought we are doing PBL.
No, no, no. So, but yes, there are some changes we need to make, adjustments you need to make to be termed as a PBL. Obviously, I'm not saying that whatever you are doing should not do it, you should not stop it. Obviously, as a teacher, you always need to be very proactive to help our students to learn. But what if you know the scientific way of implementing PBL, you will be better positioned to help your students to learn better. And that is my role in this session. So are you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I'll be asking a lot of questions. So keep informing, keep answering. Great. I am having some chats where they are saying yes. Very good. See, essentially, whatever we are doing as a these words basically are part of active learning and experiential learning. But although these basic principles of active learning, reflective learning, experiential learning from John Dewey, Piaget, Vygotsky, Cobbs, all comes and assimilates in a PBL. So that's why PBL has been termed as a very important innovations of this century. So how do we use PBL depends on what is your philosophy of, or what is your vision of the institute. That way we can take. If you ask me that what is the best way to implement PBL is have a complete philosophy of a PBL understood and then implemented. Let me tell you, none of the university in India is practicing PBL, because as far as I know, the way the PBL has to be practiced, nobody is practicing the PBL in its fullest potential. Although there are some institutions who are using PBL as a teaching learning strategy. But even though they are using, they are still in the myth category, because they have some disintegrated or fragmented approach of PBL. So that is teaching learning strategy. And then obviously the PBL can be also used as a curriculum design tool, where we support to the OBE framework. So this way we can have three different levels of models in PBL. So I'm going to explain at least two models today in a 3 hours span of time. So let's start one by one to understand how these models can be designed. Just for a moment, uh, hello, is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I thought I lost. Okay. See, if you go back to the history of PBL, it's not a new technology. Why I'm saying technology? Because it's really thoughtfully designed science. And we know that as engineers, engineering is a science. So likewise, PBL is also a technology. PBL is also a tool. PBL is also a method. So it has been started in McMaster University in 1968. So you can imagine it's almost 50 plus years down the line, the people in the world are practicing PBL. So the Alborg was instrumental to start in 1974, and then the different models of PBL has been evolved around Alborg during that period. So Roskilde in Denmark and Alborg was very proactive to understand PBL and then start implementing PBL. And still Alborg University is practicing PBL. Last 50 years, they are practicing PBL. And I was fortunate enough to become a PhD student, PhD scholar there, and completion of PhD happened through that university. And last at least close to 2.5 years, I stayed in Alborg. I have studied their model, how they practice it, their curriculum approach, their group rooms, their teaching learning. I have attended classes also, tutorials, library, equipments, everything. I know how they are gelling this as a one of the important model. And I will share with you how they are doing it. So there are different successful models around the world. In UK, they call it as a project-led education. Alborg, they call it problem-based project work. POPBL was one of the oldest model in Roskilde. Stanford University, which happens to be in a top 3 in the world, has a 5 PBLs, 5 different ways of implementing PBL. They call as a P5BL lab. Service-based learning is one of the approach in the Purdue University, US. National University Singapore usually has one problem per day. So their model is very different, that every day a teacher is coming with one problem. they actually do not teach the problem, but they explode and scaffold the problem in a class. The class is divided in some students groups, 4 to 6, and then students throughout the day goes in a group rooms or study rooms. They study the problem, they discuss with them, and at the end, during the end of the day, they come with their problem understanding, problem solution, and teacher acts as a facilitator of the problem and understanding that particular concept, and that's it. So next day again a teacher comes with a new problem and then it starts. So this is the one of the method which National University of Singapore is doing. But what is more important here to understand, why I'm telling you, is if you know the principles, if you know the characteristics, and if you know the method how to do it, you can design your own model based on your local needs. So where could be the local needs? Local needs mean maybe a local university. Local needs may be your institutional dynamics. Local needs may be your departmental availability of infrastructure, availability of labs, teachers, students. So all this can be considered in a one single way, and then you can design a fantastic model for your students, your institutions, suitable for your university. And obviously it can be done easily to the university, private universities. If you are autonomous and private university, it's very easy to implement PBL. Affiliated university model is also there, which can be designed and implemented. So all these models I'm going to tell you one by one. Can somebody tell me what is the meaning of HOTS and LOTS? I think you are attending these sessions and many of you are very senior. I can see from the participants list. Can somebody tell me what is the difference between HOTS and LOTS? Because this has some relation to today's topic. Hello.
Hello, sir.
There is a pin drop silence. Is it a
Hello,
difficult
sir.
question?
Hello, sir. Very good morning.
Yes, very good morning.
Sir, is it related to higher order thinking skills and lower order thinking skills?
Yes, you are absolutely right.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Can anybody elaborate me what is lower order thinking skill and higher order thinking skills? I think I am getting answers in a chat, but it will be much better that if you have a discussion so that everybody will understand what you are thinking.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I am Srikala. So, if any of the question we are giving, in that question, we will analyze these Bloom's taxonomy points, sir. Is it, sir?
Okay, good try, but it is not the, I would say, full 100% correct answer, but you are being very close. Anyone else? Okay, I will ask you a very simple question. What is thinking? Because anyone, if anyone asks you question, what is the immediate thing which you do?
Hello, sir, can I?
Yes, yes.
Hello? Hello.
Yes.
In HOT, we can say that whenever we explain a concept or a theory during the class, we start a flow like initially we'll explain a concept, then we'll try to apply it over something, then analyze the things. So these are the some things which are applicable in HOTS. Is it right?
Yes, you're right. Yes, but I'm asking you fundamentally how you can entice your students to think, how you will ask, challenge your students to go to the higher order thinking skills, because it is not only about activity, it's
I
more
create questions in their mind.
yes. So once you create a question in their mind, and that question is more challenging, which is not possible to answer while going to the Google Master, then probably they will address to the higher order thinking skills. So remember this, that higher order thinking skills is more focused on creating something, analyzing, and finally creating some artifacts. So the creation is the ultimate end of Bloom's taxonomy in a cognitive domain. And obviously we have a PBL which has been designed to address higher order thinking skills rather than lower order thinking skills. Because traditionally, whenever we enter in a class, we only have more focus on teaching rather than students learning. Okay, now I'll ask you again a very simple question. How many senses we have? Senses. Hello?
Five.
Yes, very good, 5. So, can I ask participant a question? Let's say I take a first name as a Manish Jha Saab. Are you there? Or Nilesh Pandre? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell me which are the 5 senses?
Taste,
Smelling,
Smell. Okay.
smell,
So
taste,
sight,
touch,
taste, sight,
okay, seeing. Okay,
sight.
saying.
sight.
Okay, 2.
Sir, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch.
Okay. So there are 5 hosts helping you to answer the questions. Well, I want from participants. Okay, that's good. So eyes, which enables us to see the things. Now you can mute yourself. Dr. Nayak, you can also mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. So basically, we are having been gifted by 5 senses, and that 5 senses is our eyes, which enables us to see, our ears, which enables us to hear, our tongue, which enables us to taste, our skin, which enables us to touch, and our nose, which enables us to smell. So these are the 5 senses. Now, if you see, if you enter into the class and then ask your students to listen, which sense is more predominant?
Yes.
Ears. Very good. So in a 1 hour of lecture, if you continuously asking your students to listen, then probably you will see that the outcome will be very, very low. Because if you go to the edges, this pyramid, what he says that whenever you are giving a 1 hour of lecture, a mind can only focus for a 15 minutes, and in that 15 minutes only 20% is remembered. So imagine you have given a best of best lecture, but your students are only listening without actively involved. Although you are doing the great work of teaching, but the students are not learning. So the point is that when we are engaging your students in a different settings, we need to understand that how these five senses are actually involved in classroom activities or outside the class activities. Then there is a classical way of domains where learning is differentiated in three different domains, which is called as a affective domain, psychomotor domain, and cognitive domain. So if you see in these three domains, if you want your students to become active, the student need to participate either in the form of discussion or a talk or do the real things. And PBL is more combination of all this, right from top to bottom, because how it has been done, how it has been nicely integrated, where the students are reading, listening, they are actually doing the real things, they are having a discussion, and they are having a lot of social interactions. So this is how the PBL helps the students to go from passive learner to the active learner, and that is what many of you are interested in. But why I'm telling you all this, because I'm trying to create a base. One way, there is a Bloom's taxonomy which asks us to move students from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. And another way, this is Dell's pyramid, which says that if you want to involve your students in active learning principles, involve their all type of domains, that is psychomotor domain, which is more to the practice to your hands or body or parts. Affective domain, it's a heart and brain together. And then we have cognitive domain, which is more close to the brain. And then we have five senses combined with all these teaching learning strategies gives a one single PBL model. Okay, good enough. Now the base is created. So let's understand PBL theoretically first and then practically. If you go back to the history of PBL, the PBL was started in 1968. And from 1968 to 1986, if you see here, 1986. So 18 years, scientists, researchers, psychologists, educationists were trying to understand how this can be designed in a proper way. So the Barrows in 1986 came with some taxonomy, which is a very famous taxonomy that is called the Barrows taxonomy of PBL. What he says that the learning needs to be student-centered. Unlike our traditional teaching, where the teacher is at the center. And then what he says that the learning has to start with the authentic problem. Unlike our in traditional teaching, how the learning starts with teachers coming in a class and then teaching something. So what he says that learning needs to start with the authentic problem first. So as a teacher, we need to identify the authentic problem. And what is this authentic problem? I will explain when I go to the characteristic of the problem, which is authentic. Then the problems are used as a tool. Problems are used as a tool to achieve the required knowledge and the skills which you think the student should develop to become practicing professional. So again, I'm repeating, learning has to be student-centered. So the teacher is not a central role. Student is a central role. Teacher has to identify the clear-cut problem, which is the beginning of learning. It's not an end of the learning. Then the problem which has been identified is used as a vehicle or as a tool to address learning objective, required knowledge, and also to enhance student skills. How essential it should happen? It should happen in a small students groups under the guidance of the tutor. So the tutor is someone who helps students to understand this. And then he acts as a facilitator to learn. And more importantly, the students' characteristics of self-learning and directing their own learning and acquiring the new information. So this is very systematically said taxonomy, but sometimes it is very difficult to digest, because why? It has been given very theoretically and it doesn't relate to the Bloom's taxonomy, or neither it relates to the three basic fundamental learning domains. So then how to do that in better way? So in 2004, scientists Annette Kolmos and Eric de Graaf and their colleagues came with the taxonomy again, with now they're termed as a principles of PBL. And these PBL principles I'll be essentially using in my next talks. So you can take what I can say is a snapshot of PBL learning principles. Okay. So for your information, you can take a snap of this because these are very important principles of PBL. And one by one, I'll explain these principles so that we can design appropriate PBL practice. So first principle of PBL is a cognitive principle. If you remember Bloom's taxonomy, which we discussed just a few minutes before. So that Bloom's taxonomy's top layer or peak of the pyramid is cognitive, in cognitive domain. In that, problem has been used as a vehicle to enhance cognitive abilities of the students. Content principle is more close to the contextualization of a PBL problem. And the social principle is very close to the social constructivist approach of Vygotsky. And each approach I will tell you one by one. And please focus now because it's very core of PBL. And if you have any difficulty in digesting this, please stop me in between and ask question. Is that okay? Because now I am starting the core fundamental PBL. Up till now, I was just making a fundamental base for you, where you understand the taxonomy in education domain. Okay, so thoughtfully focus on this now. In next 7 to 8 minutes, you are going to understand these principles. And if you are having any kind of a doubt in between, stop me and ask me. Okay, so let's understand this principle one by one. Now, what is cognition? Can somebody tell me what is cognition? Okay, I will ask you in a different way. Whether everybody has a brain?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So you will say that what kind of a foolish question was that? Yes, everybody has a brain.
Yes, sir.
Whether everybody has an equal brain?
No. Thinking power is different.
Okay, that's very good answer. So Why do you think that the thinking power is different?
Depending upon their IQ level.
IQ level is one indicator of your thinking ability. So it is not the other way around.
Their experiences are different.
Oh yeah, okay. They are living in different domain, but
Exposure also counts.
but inherent ability of their brain.
Exposure.
Exposure, it's yes. Obviously, exposure creates something called we will call as experience knowledge. But more important is here, it's the ability of individuals' brains. And God has gifted us this wonderful organ which gives ability to think. And not only ability to think, but think in a different directions, different ways, and then change the way we keep on experiencing the things. And that is how the cognitive domain works. Suppose if first time, a very simple example I will tell you because I don't want to go deep into this cognitive domain, but I will simply explain you how this brain works. If you first time ever have seen the lemon, first time first time in your life, somebody might have told you that the lemon has yellow color and this small size. Okay, then second time you cut that lemon and then you test it. So what your brain will do now, brain will change its own understanding about the lemon. The first time when he sees the lemon, he will understand, okay, something yellow and round in shape is a lemon. But when you test it, the brain will again change the original information, which was only color and the shape. Now it will add a test into it. So what the new information will be stored something like that. Lemon is yellow or green, which is round in shape, and it is test it's sour. So this is the third information which is stored in the brain. And then slowly and steadily, if you have a different combination, how to use the lemon and all these things are stored in the brain because brain stores the information. And all these informations helps us to retain it for a longer time. Something which we use daily, very often we have this standard way of doing the things. Like for example, cooking. In a cooking, there is very less significant use of the brain because the brain stores every information in it. I mean, it has always been programmed. We know how to do it. We do it. But something new is coming. Something new recipe has to be developed. Then our brain has to understand the information, digest the information, and apply this information to the new context. And this is how the brain works. In a PBL, it happens the same way. So PBL promotes students' cognitive thinking. Why? Because students have been challenged to solve the problem. And what is the type of the problem it is? It is the type of the problem which students will feel challenging. So this particular slide is about how students' cognitive abilities are challenged. Cognitive abilities means their ability to think, their ability to find the information, digest that information, comprehend that information, and use this information to solve the problem. That is application of the knowledge. And while solving it, try to create something which is different, which is innovative, which is creative. And that is how this particular cognitive domain helps students to learn differently. Let's see how. Let's see how. First, try to understand what are the characteristics of a PBL problem. If you go to the literature of a PBL, they will say the PBL problem is either challenging or a complex or a difficult or engaging. So in my opinion, these are one of the same synonyms used for one characteristic of a PBL problem is that the problem has to be complex. Why it has to be complex? Because if it is just a textbook problem, which is having a simple solution, the students will copy the solutions. So basically it helps your students to tease their brains. So their brains will be challenged, students' brain will be challenged. So it's their teaser. Not well defined, or sometimes it is called the ill structured. Why it is should not be well defined? Why it is called as the ill structured? Because if students understand the problem, analyze its scope it, analyze it, and try to define it, they will learn better. They will learn better. The third element is that the problem which has been identified, ask students should inquiry and research. Inquiry and research means what? Something which is not readily available on the Google. So nowadays, we are having online examinations where there are MCQs and students are going to Google Master and finding the answers. So the PBL problem is not something which is easily available. So it needs to have a lot of inquiry, a lot of research to solve it. So basically it helps students to learn researching skills and self-learning. And the problem should not have a single solution. It should not have a single solution. If it has a single solution, then every student will learn and will copy, and then the learning of only few students will happen. All students will not learn. And neither, if you have many solutions, then the innovations, thinking abilities, out of box thinking and creative thinking, logical thinking will improve. To understand this, all these four essential characteristics of PBL, let's take one example. Let's take one example. If you have any question, you can ask after example, because I am giving you a pause for a few minutes to digest what I am saying. Okay, so let's take this example where you are asking your students to solve this problem. Okay, what you could see in the image, just give a look at the image, have a look at the image, and tell me what you are seeing in the image. Yes, Archit Sukhade is saying burning windmill. That is fantastic. Answer, anyone, any meaning or any other thing? Anyone can see something different. Windmill caught fire, yes. Okay, now if I ask you, solve this problem, what will be your reaction? Can anybody tell me? Suppose today I give you this task to solve this problem and come with the solution by the end of the day. What will be your reaction? Just tell, because this is something to be discussed. Don't answer in the chats. Those who knows the answer or are wanted to communicate, just unmute yourself and talk. Suppose you are a student and then I have given you this task to solve this problem and come with a solution at the end of the day. What will be your thinking? How you will approach it?
Find out the reason why this fire has caught.
Okay, very good. Find out the reason. Yes.
Put out the fire first and then get in touch with an engineer to basically figure out what the problem is.
Okay, so you will try to understand the problem. Okay. Very good.
Immediate shutdown is required.
Shutting down is at what is happening at a space. I am asking student to solve in a class.
Shut down the power or the electricity from where it has occurred. The root cause of it.
Okay, so you will try to identify the root cause. Okay, fine. How you will identify the root cause or a problem, what is happening? Whether it
Maybe electricity problem or something burning nearby.
okay.
Might be turbine fail or anything else.
Okay, now see, I got 5 answers to this question. So why I'm asking you this, because whenever there is a problem given to the students and when they start thinking about it, because within a 2 minutes or 3 minutes, you have given me 5 different ways it can be interpreted. Why? Because you have started thinking, isn't it? Without thinking, can you answer?
No.
No. So a very simple thing I did, I have given you one simple question, that why this particular hub is burning. And then you came with immediately some approaches like finding the root cause, maybe electricity or something else, or a turbine. So imagine that there is a wind turbine industry outside. This is the real problem. It's a real world problem. And wind turbine industry is looking for that kind of engineers, scientists who can stop this burning hub. Or the hub essentially consists of a generator and the gearbox. And why it has been burning, you never know. Sometimes because of the wind speed, there is a lot of friction between the elements, heat is generated, that catches fire. Maybe sometimes because of the wind speed, there is a larger EMF is generated, overheating happens, more current is happening. So you never know what is the root cause, but still it is burning. Or some students will say that, okay, if it is happening because of the higher speeds, I can employ something else. So when you are posing the problem in front of the students, immediately, suddenly, it provokes your students to think. And if you ask your students to solve this problem, they will come up with different solutions. They will come up with their own way of interpreting the problem. And that is essentially a characteristic of a first cognitive domain of a PBL problem, where you are asking your students to solve a challenging, complex, difficult problem, which is not well defined. I have not defined the problem. You yourself define the problem, what you really want to do in this particular problem. Because like somebody has said that I will try to understand first why this is happening. So something is called as a root cause analysis. So you are analyzing the real problem is about. And then you will think about, okay, what is happening? Maybe I will talk to the engineer, I will talk to the site person, why it is happening. Or immediately some actions will be taken. I will first shut down it. I will try to seize the fire and then try to investigate what is happening. And then in future, it should not happen. So I will try to find a solution. And everyone will come with a different solutions. And that's the beauty of PBL problem, that PBL problem doesn't have a single solution. Okay. Any question?
No, sir. Trying to digest.
You are not audible actually. Any question? If I'm asking, want to ask you, anyone can ask.
No, sir. I'm trying to understand.
Okay. Okay. So let's go for further detail. Now, if a same problem, I give to the electronics engineer. Okay, let's take a case of this same problem. I give this problem to solve to the electronics engineer. Do you think his approach will be same as a mechanical engineer?
No,
Why not?
because electronics engineer will think as per the electrical as well as electronics component sides, and mechanical engineer will think towards turbine sides. So the function of the turbine and function of the electronic circuitry and electronics control circuitries are totally different. So I don't think that mechanical engineer will have the same thinking like electronics engineer.
What if this same problem is given to the 12th science student?
12th science students may tell that how to extinguish the fire, this fire immediately. If he is having no any knowledge of internal construction, then
So imagine a 12th science student group is been given to solve this problem. So what they will do, they will try to understand, realize how it works, why the particular burning is there, internal construction, and then try to find the root cause. And this root cause analysis will help the students to understand what is the real problem in wind turbine burning. And even though such kind of cognitive activities will help your students to understand that engineering is not something to be learned in a class. Obviously, some fundamental knowledge will be given, but this is how is more about understanding the problem and then try to solve that problem. I agree to your point, yes, because each branch gives a different context of learning, and then according to the students' brain development, they start thinking. Because mechanical engineers have now been trained to think like a mechanical engineer, and that's why they will think like a mechanical engineer. Electronics engineer, because they have been taught to think as an electronics engineer, because their brain is developed as an electronics engineer. That's called as a cognition. That is cognition. And thank you to that answer. Now let's go to the more deeper level of PBL. Why I'm asking you this question, because any problem cannot be given to the any group of the students. Some contextualization has to make, and that contextualization is taken care in the second principle of PBL, that is called as a content approach. Would you like to ask question? Because your mic is on. Somebody is there. Yeah, thank you. Yes. So content approach is the something which takes care of contextualization of a PBL problem. So one way, you have identified a very nice problem which satisfy first four characteristics. However, we need to contextualize this problem in a particular domain, because PBL sometimes is called as an interdisciplinary approach, but that interdisciplinary approach have been wrongly interpreted as it should have all students working together. Yes, that can happen, but that can happen in a different settings. So let's understand this way. So what is a content approach is that a problem which you have chosen, it should be such a way that it addresses your learning objective. And so that is why it is called as exemplary practice, which helps your students to achieve learning objectives. It is an exemplary practice which helps your students to understand their disciplinary and interdisciplinary learning. So it helps professionally your students to understand the basic fundamental knowledge about their own branch and interrelation with other branches. So it's a interdisciplinary learning happens. Unlike in mechanical engineering, there is a concept called as basic electronics engineering or basic electrical engineering. There are subjects like electrical technology in mechanical engineering. Why they are there? We know it because mechanical engineer will require some knowledge of electrical motors. Mechanical engineer will require some knowledge about fundamentals of electronics. But if you see this, students are predominantly doing their major in mechanical. But if you have a PBL in a picture, they will not only learn interdisciplinary, but they will apply interdisciplinary knowledge. That's the difference. And so the PBL problem, the content approach will takes care of both. It's exemplary practice. It takes care of professional skills. It takes care of interdisciplinary knowledge, depth and breadth. And more importantly, the content approach establishes relation between the theory, which is to learn in a class, and the practice, which the students are doing while they are trying to solve the problem. So basically, understand this 4 element again based on a same problem, which we have understood in a few minutes before. So try to understand that a PBL is the problem which you have chosen has to satisfy your learning objectives. It will be professionally interrelated, intertwined. It should provide students a sufficient knowledge, depth and breadth, and obviously it will help your students to apply while learning to solve the problem, apply whatever they already know, and then the addition of something new in their knowledge base. So let's understand this again, once again in an example. With example, we'll understand this. Suppose the same problem is being understood by electrical engineer. Electrical engineering teacher will understand this as this is the generator problem, because it's more happening at the generator level, because wind turbine generates the electricity. And suppose I am a teacher of electrical engineering and I am teaching a class called as a generator design class. That is a course in a, say, maybe in a 3rd year electrical. And let's understand that way. So 3rd year electrical course has to be designed so that ultimately students learn that how to design a generators which are fireproof or which are giving the power without any further damage to the wind turbine. So what will happen that in a class, because I am a teaching generator design, I will provide students basic knowledge because the course has been designed that way. Some lab experiments will be created to understand basic tools and techniques by which how a generator can be designed. Learning material will be also related to the generator design, because my focus is to help students to learn how to design a generator. And with these fundamental things in the student's mind and simultaneously applying the principles of their generator design, will they able to get a proper outcome or not? Will they able to get a proper outcome with this approach? Okay, Dr. Jaya, you want to say something? Okay.
No, sir. No,
Okay.
sir.
Anybody has any question? See, once again, contextualization of a PBL problem is very important, because now what I did, I have tried to contextualize the problem in electrical domain. If the same problem has been taken by mechanical engineer, his contextualization will be different. What he will try to do, he will try to understand the problem in a mechanical way, because their brains have been trained to understand or think in a mechanical domain. So the contextualization is very essential. So what the problem has to be relevant to the discipline. It should be relevant to the content to be learned. So it becomes very authentic to the students for learning purpose. And then a teacher has to select such a problem which is suitable to learning objective. So the learning goals are achieved. And finally, while solving that problem, a group of students, my students, should enjoy that problem solving process. And obviously it should help students to further go advanced in their professional practice. So going back again to this domain, content domain, contextualization, what we did, first we identified the problem, which is a PBL problem. So this is a PBL problem which is challenging, complex. It's not well defined because I have never explained what is happening here. So you by your own experience understood the problem. Then it is not having a single solution, because there could be a multiple solutions to this problem. And it is not a one-day problem that you can easily solve in a one day. So you require a lot of inquiry, a lot of research to come with a concrete problem. So these are the cognitive domain characteristics of a PBL. And then in the second characteristics, what I did, I tried to contextualize. Contextualize, that means I have taken an example of electrical engineering where I developed my course called as a generator design. So in that, a basic knowledge is been given, lab experiments are curated to solve this problem, learning material is curated, the students are equipped with fundamental things, and then they will apply this knowledge to the given problem. Now, essentially, if I ask you, if this is not done, what will happen? If suppose this we are not doing, this is cancelled. And then we only ask, okay, this is the problem, students should solve this problem. What will happen? Will you get the proper outcomes?
No.
Why not? Why not?
Because as per the engineering level, if they are having no any basic concepts related to wind turbine, I think whatever the solution they will provide, they will just vague solution, not up to the mark.
Okay. Okay. Any other interpretation or any other comment?
If the while analyzing the problem itself, if we go wrong, then whatever solutions we get, it will not be feasible for the problem.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So I got two answers which essentially tells us about traditional way of practicing projects. Because we believe as a teachers that unless and until we provide some prerequisites fundamental knowledge, it will be very difficult for a student to solve the problem. And that is where precisely we are doing the wrong thing. And especially PBL breaks that culture where your students are spoon fed with fundamental knowledge, fundamental learning material, everything is provided, and then students try to apply their knowledge and then they try to get the solution. In fact, this total practice is not PBL. Then it's the other way around. It's other way around. That is how the PBL cycle works in a different fashion. How? Let me tell you. First, let me know whether you have understood these two principles of PBL, cognitive and content. If there is any difficulty in this?
No, sir.
No, very good. So let's understand the third principle, which is called as the social principle. And there where the learning is actually starts happening. And let's go back to the Barrett's taxonomy again, because that will help us to understand the process of learning. In a social constructivism, let's go back now. Okay. Now, suppose we are not teaching to our students, even the student doesn't know anything about electrical engineering or any engineering, and they have been given this problem. What will happen in a students? Because social construction is one of the theory of Vygotsky, in which what he says that if you interact with the environment, if you interact with the people, you will learn better. And that is obviously in an Indian tradition, we learn from our mother and father first and the gurus. Why? Because we learn when we interact with the environment. And that could be anything. Interacting with a mobile, interacting with a computer, interacting with an engine, interacting with a vehicle, electronics, anything, whatever is there is in an environment. Whenever you interact with your environment, you learn. Okay. Suppose your students have been thrown a problem which is PBL problem, which is a challenging problem which they have never solved. What will be the thought process of those students? That is how I'm going to explain now. So the first, students will try to understand what is the nature of the problem. So the group of students working in a team, try to reflect on the problem. Try to reflect and try to understand what is the real problem is about. And when they do it, they try to have a lot of brainstorming. If I ask you to brainstorm on what is the root cause of burning this, probably what you will do, you will sit together, you will discuss, and then you will try to figure out what is the root cause. And once the root cause has been found, then this students team will think, okay, what we really know about this problem. And then you try to figure out the X factor or Y factor or a Z factor about the problem. And then each group will understand, okay, as a team, what we know about solving this problem, what prerequisite fundamentals I have. Let's say to solve the X problem, I have say X1 kind of a knowledge. Other member will say, okay, I know something about Y, so I have Y1. And some other member will say, I know something about Z category, I have Z1. So now understand, students are trying to understand the problem. They have understood the problem and they try to figure out, if you want to solve the problem, we require this X, Y, Z. That is how the students will define the learning goals in the team. So learning goals are nothing but this X, Y, and Z to solve the problem. So the someone who knows X1 about the problem X, somebody who knows the problem about Y, and somebody who knows about the Z, he will say, okay, I know something about this. I will learn more deep about this and I'll come back to you again in a next meeting. Y will say, okay, you X, you do the X thing, Y will do Y thing, and Z will do Z thing. And when they come back next time, they will have this distribution of the work X, Y, Z, and then they will come and they share with each other. X will share what they have learned, Y will share what he has learned, and Z will share what he has learned, so that a complete group knows about X, Y, Z. Complete group learns about X, Y, Z. Again, with this X, Y, Z combination, they will go to the problem and they will see whether the problem can be solved or not. And this happens continuously throughout the semester. In a cyclic process, this happens continuously. So while the students are solving in this cycle, what the teacher is doing? What teacher is doing, teacher is providing important instructions which are required to solve the problems. What teacher is doing, teacher is helping students to develop their skills in the labs. What teacher is doing, teacher is observing this group, that how they are approaching into the problem solving process. What teacher is doing, teacher is explaining the students if they are not understanding the concepts properly. So basically instructions will play a critical role while solving the problem. So the problem becomes the central part of the learning, not as a peripheral part of a learning. Everything starts with the problem first, and then the rest will fall together according to the problem. So if you in another way around, if you want to take it away, a teacher has to identify the problem first, give it to the students, teams. Now, can anybody tell me, in a PBL problem, why there is a need of a team? Why there is a need of a team?
You can have many ideas to solve the problem. There will be, you may get different ways to solve the same problem. You will be exposed to different ideas.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
If the teacher is helping students in developing the skills, so it may happen that if we have a team, every student may capture in different way and will develop some different skill. So that will be helpful in problem solving.
Very good. Very good. But my fundamental question was different. I know once the team is there, it can happen. But my question is why the team is required? Why not single person?
Okay, but it will be time consuming then.
Very good. It will be time consuming. Okay. Any other dimension?
Since each person have different knowledge and they are different in mastering different knowledge, they can utilize their knowledge and experience. They can share with each other. So the problem is easily within time it may be solved.
Okay. Fantastic. Very fantastic answer. Okay. Anyone else who want to try it? Understand my question. My question is very simple. Why you require team? Why not a single person? Two answers I got, which I think which is a very correct answers. But I want something else in the context of PBL principles. Think about PBL principles. If you understood the PBL principles in cognitive domain and a content domain, you will answer me this question.
Third principle, that is social, is it related to that? And also we are dealing with the POs that are dealing with the project based learning and all that. Program outcomes, we can relate with it, sir?
Yes, you can definitely relate. That is next part. But my question again was related to teams. Why always in a PBL environment students have a teams? How this came into the picture that, okay, when there is a PBL, students need to group together. Why?
Sir, ideas are different when we create a group. So the ideas of each person is different to solve the problem.
Brainstorming will be done.
Brainstorming will be done when you make a teams, but why teams are required? That's the question.
They could come up with different solutions. So you have to figure out which is the best solution
Solutions to what?
to the problem. So
And
maybe
what is the nature of a problem?
Multidimensional.
Exactly. Now you come to the point, because the problem demands that a single person cannot solve it. A single person cannot have a knowledge of multiple domains. A single person cannot solve a complex problem. A single person cannot have a capacity of a brain to solve that problem. That's why by design, I am telling you, it's a by design in a PBL, we need to find a complementary team. Now somebody help me to understand what is the meaning of a group and a team. I'm very happy you are giving fantastic answers. I'm very, very happy. I'm so happy. Now let's go more deeper now. What I am asking a question, what is the difference between a group and a team?
In team, we distribute the work and we synchronize the work and get the goal properly.
Who do that?
Each member of the team.
Okay, but I asked a question, what is the difference between a group and a team?
A team will have a leader.
That is a characteristic of a team.
Yeah.
The difference between group and team.
Team will be working towards one same problem. Group may not. They'll be thinking differently.
Yes, you are very close to answer, ma'am. I will give you a hint.
Sir, team has a purpose. The team is formed with certain purpose. It might be the solving of the problem or some target-oriented work or output. The group is just come as a group, like a group of people, and they might not have certain aim or problem to be solved.
Okay, fantastic. Can you name yourself, please?
Sir, I am Anil Patil.
Okay, very good answer, sir. It's the correct answer, in which a group is something which is not came together. They just came together, stay with for some time, and they just segregate themselves. But the team is something which is working for a certain objective. Their goal is common goal. Team India. What is the goal of Team India? Cricket team.
Yes, to win the matches, cricket
win the
matches.
Win the match.
Very good. Now, if you imagine to win the matches, you require skills or not?
Of course, sir.
Definitely yes.
Definitely yes. Of course, I like that answers, but unfortunately, we are not justifying with our students. Let's understand in a cricket fashion. Okay. Now, who is the best batsman in Indian cricket team nowadays?
Virat Kohli.
Virat Kohli. Who is
Rohit
the best?
Sharma, number of theirs, sir.
Rohit Sharma is there.
Rohit Sharma is
Rohit
one of
Sharma.
Rohit Sharma is there. And
Rahul
then
is there.
Rahul is there.
Also, Ashwin is doing batting well, sir, because the team is a number of people with multi-dimensional people in that team.
Okay.
That's why we are winning team.
What if is the only all batsmen are there? No bowler.
The
No bowler.
bowler is there.
No, no, I don't want to take bowlers. I will take only all batsmen.
All-rounder.
All-rounder is there, sir. Yes, of course.
I will not take all rounders also. I will not take all rounders. I will take only batsmen.
Then it's difficult to winning the matches.
Then who will, how to get the wickets, sir?
Then high scoring matches will be there.
Yes, of course.
Now understand this in a different fashion, because if I choose all the batsmen, who will bowl? If I choose all the bowlers, who will bat? And suppose both the batsmen and bowlers don't want to take catches, then
We will lose, sir.
so understand this, that whenever there is a team has complementary skills. Team has complementary skills. And somebody is talking. So can you mute, please?
I have muted.
Okay, thank you. Now try to understand the same way in a PBL context. First, understand why the PBL by design demands team. Because team is motivated to solve the problem. That is very essential first. And in Aalborg, there is a special day called as a project day. How they do in Aalborg, they call all the students in a class and ask them to present their own problem. Whatever the problem they wanted to work on. So many students have their social backgrounds, technical backgrounds, their observations. Sufficient time is given student to think about their own problem. And in a class, students will explain their problem individually. And then they will ask, okay, to solve this particular problem, I need 2 more people who have a knowledge about X and who has a knowledge about Y. If I get these 2 people more, I think we'll be able to solve this problem. So what he is doing now, he's trying to find a person with complementary skills. And the Aalborg is doing it best because in the very beginning of a semester, they have this project day where each student come with a different problem, and the groups are not formed at that time, because the teams will form only when they will have a complementary skills to solve that problem. And not only that, they are equally motivated to solve that problem. Let's take an example of a student who come with a problem from the farmer's domain. And he tells, okay, this is the problem which my father is facing when he goes into the farming. And if he thinks that this problem can be solved if there is another group of people who is also a farmers. So because they are equally motivated to solve this problem. So the outcome will be much better because the team has equal motivation, which is unlike what we do in our educational settings. In our traditional setting, what is done? Students are forming a team with their friends. Friends may have complementary skills, friends may not have complementary skills. So the first and immediate thing is professionalism is lost because there is no professionalism. Because I am your friend, you are my friend, let's work together, let's do something and submit. So our practice promotes academic projects. Our practice promotes casual way of working in a team. Successful teams will have a successful projects. You might have observed during your career that some groups will do excellent, extraordinary well, but most of the teams in projects are not even at par. Why this is happening? Because of wrong practice of making the teams. And in PBL, teams are very, very essential. Group is a group of friends. They are not a team. They are came together because they somehow want to complete the project because it's a need of academics. and they submit it. Quality, I don't want to comment on the quality of this because I know there are a lot of businesses going around the projects, but this is not the way. So understand there is a scientific principle of having a team in a PBL, because that principle is called as a social constructivism principle, which is Vygotsky principle, that is called as a social constructivism. Why this happens? Because it takes care of two fundamental ways of learning. One is a cooperative learning and another is a collaborative learning. Cooperative learning and collaborative learning is an essential element of learning in PBL, because whatever the way you choose the problem, whatever the way you contextualize, outcome of a PBL largely depend on the third principle, that is called as a social principle. Let's understand the social principle again. If let's go further because this has already been discussed. So social principle is a principle in which students are working together, and while working together they are having two approaches. One is called as cooperative learning and another is called as a collaborative learning. Can somebody explain me what is cooperative learning and what is collaborative learning?
So collaborative learning means some team that have more knowledge in a different field. Okay. And they are collaborating their knowledge with us and to do our task, to complete our task. And cooperative cooperative means yes, they're not cooperative. They share their knowledge for temporary purpose. The cooperative manner they can share their knowledge with us.
Okay. Okay, very good. Nice try. Your 90% answer is correct. I want somebody else to again refine the things. Anyone else? Because your answer is correct. 90% you are closer. I want someone else to refine it, refine the answer.
Sir, may I speak? Hello.
Yes, please go ahead. Please
Yes.
go.
Sir, what I learned from the words, collaborative means working together for achieving the same goal, and cooperative learning means helping each other in getting the things right.
Yes, you are 99% correct. 1% is that 1% addition just to you. I just rephrase your words. Cooperative learning is helping each other to learn, and collaborative is learning together.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is there any difficulty in understanding collaborative and cooperative learning?
Also, can you please repeat your sentence?
Okay, I will explain. Everybody, some or other day, every institute, some or other day is going for a NAC. And in NAC, everybody is working, right? NAC or NBA, everybody is working?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
So that is collaboration.
Yes.
And who is helping each other to understand the criteria? Criteria coordinators are helping each other to understand each other's criteria. So that is cooperation.
Okay.
So the cooperation means learning, helping each other to learn cooperatively. And collaborative means learning together because you are sharing the workload of a complete learning. So it becomes more teamwork. And that learning is directed by the problem. It's directed by the problem, and that problem is driven by the learning objectives. So the three essential elements are aligned together. That is problem, which is complex, challenging, difficult, doesn't have single solution, ask students to inquiry, which is being contextualized because it is addressing learning objectives. It is helping students to acquire professional skills. It is helping students to have an experience of solving the problem. And then students are helping each other to learn and solving the problems. And by the time they do it, they are also enhancing their knowledge level. They are getting a new knowledge, or they are developing the fundamental knowledge about the problems. That is called as a social construction of knowledge, because knowledge is constructed together, because everybody is raising their knowledge at the end of the semester. And that is what PBL outcomes are all about. Okay, any question in these three principles of PBL?
Sir? Sir? Shall we have a break of 5 minutes, sir?
Yes, I'm taking a break just because I just wanted to finish the principles of PBL.
Yes.
Sir, in PBL, we are going for collaborative work, sir. More collaborative work.
Yes, it's a inter and intra both collaboration possible in a PBL, and that is how the teams has to be identified as a teams with complementary skills.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Whenever you are making a team, just remember Indian cricket team. All bowlers will not work, all batsmen will not work. So we need to have a combination of different skills in a team. So if your students are coming with a project or any problem in front of you, so your immediate question is that what kind of skills you have to solve this problem? What you know about this problem? And then suddenly students will have questions in their mind. We don't know anything about this problem. So let's choose a different problem. So this way they keep on doing the things. And because of this, all these wrong practices we are doing, outcomes of the projects are not that much, which is more expected. Like students doesn't develop a technology. Very few students out of 100, one group or two groups in a whole institute will do good projects. Other students will submit the projects as academic projects, which will lie in the lab, which will be useful for showing to the NAC committee, and that's it. Conversion of problems into the products, that is what is our aim should be as an Indian community of teachers. Okay, I just wanted to finish this first session because it always takes a lot of time. And being a teacher, I always give more time on this session because it's a fundamental of PBL principles. Anyone has any doubt in PBL principles, let me know. Because I'll start next part.
Sir?
Yes.
Yeah, only one question now. At what semester we can introduce this kind of activities?
It
because
is not.
Because activity in the sense PB learning. Because we need context also. We know students should know the domain knowledge.
If you take my experience, students will develop simultaneously. So at any age, even schools are implementing PBL. So it is not a case that we should only have a PBL in a final year or third year. It's a traditional approach, and that is called as an add-on strategy in doing the projects, and that doesn't work. We know last almost 70 to 80 years, technical education is in India is not helping us to develop our own technology. Why it is happening? Because our students are solving the real world problems, or not even real world problems. They are doing the projects in the final year where they are focused on getting the jobs. They are focused on getting out of the institutions. Their focus is on preparing for the higher education, and at the same time we're expecting good projects from them. No, good projects can happen in first year, second year, or maybe in latter early third year. After that, students focus is almost lost, and that's why we do not get good final year projects, very few.
But from teacher point of view, sir, if the students bring their projects or problems, the felicitator may not be good enough in all the domains, and how he will be a good guide.
So that is why you require a collaborative team of teachers,
Okay,
and that
sir.
is, and the teacher will become a co-learner in this. It will not be confined to only a single course, and that is why I will say the teacher's knowledge will progress, teacher will progress, teacher will build his capacity to solve the problems, and when Indian teacher builds his capacity to solve problems, he will be more useful to the society, he will be more useful to the industry. Teachers in India are lost in the books, because what they are doing, they are teaching only one book or maybe a subject, and they see that their role in Indian education system is to only teach. Rather, I will say, if the teacher develops the capacity to solve the problems, his knowledge will improve. When his knowledge will improve, automatically quality of the students solving the problem will improve. His entrance into the class, his control over the class, confidence in a class will improve, and there are so many things which can improve when the teacher is improved. And that is how in PBL it can happen. I think it's a time to have a break, because it's almost 2 hours I am talking. Let's take a break of 5 minutes, or maybe 5, 7, 8 minutes, and come back at
Yes, sir. Sir, but before departing, I request all the participants to start the video so that we can have some snaps. You also, sir, please.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, sir. You tell convenient time so that we can again join again.
We'll take a 5 to 6 minutes break, so we'll be back around 11. I'll
10:55 now. 10:55.
So I will start at 11:05.
11:05. Yes, sir.
I will start at 11:05.
Yes, sir. Yes.